On Patreon, we give advanced cheat sheets for all DFS sports on DraftKings. These cheat sheets include updated projections, ownership, and our overall favorite plays from slate to slate. We take it a step further by teaching you how to play fantasy sports like a shark, by showing you where the best leverage spots are to put you in the best spots to take down tourneys. Also included is our private Discord chat where you get to talk over the slate with everyone, including our coaches, to help build your lineups. What is going on, guys? Matt Downs with Daily Grind Fantasy Sports to help give you the edge for this MMA slate. Cannot wait to break it down. If you guys are brand new to this channel, we provide both free and paid content for all daily fantasy sports across all sports. If you could please show your support by hitting that subscribe button, notification bell, and of course smashing that like button for all of our future MMA content. If you would like to know more about becoming a better DFS player and taking down that big GPP, head over to www.patreon.com/DGFantasy for more information. Now let's go ahead and dive right into this MMA slate. Cannot wait to break it down after 2 weeks ago, one of the craziest MMA fights we've ever seen between McGregor. That was crazy. You want to talk about that, Kevin? Do you want to go ahead and just break down the last 2 weeks?
Yes, sir. So I'll do that recap 2 weeks ago. So I feel for the most part, to be honest, Matt, my calls were pretty damn good, pretty on point for a very popular 257 card. That being said, I don't think I took my own advice for the exposure to Warrior, and I got burned for it. I deserve it.
I think everybody did.
Yep. I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, we'll talk about the fight, that fight, real quick, and then we'll kind of go reverse order here. But so Poirier was my top punt, and I told everyone not to sleep on him. That I genuinely believe he improved more than Conor did during the time span of their first fight. That being said, I did love the way and this is what happens. You love the construction of your lineup. Sometimes you like other picks and the way like underdogs fit and salary savers fit.
Right.
And the way that worked is I ended up with like, I don't even know, honestly, Matt, a lot, like I at least 80-90% McGregor. And the thing was, I was like, listen, if he wins, which is as a -300 plus favorite, I think he was at the time.
Yeah.
I was, my lineups are all, because I love my other picks. Like I had a ton of Michael Chandler, for example, like as an underpay, like had a ton of other good punts. So I was like, if he wins, I'm literally putting my stock into a -300 favorite to cash and then like to smoke a slate. And I would, again, everything sounded good until he got slept. So, but yeah, would work golden except for McGregor. But I bought all in. I was a casual, so I deserve it. I got burned. I just 100% eat that one. I'm happy for Dustin though. He looked awesome and top. He was my top punt, so that helps. He did look great. But let's go to the other fights. The first fight on the card was Albazi. I said was live as the underdog, and he won, which was nice. Second, I said to fade Mosar at his price, and I'm glad I did. Lentz actually gave him a hell of a time. Almost caught him on a guillotine like 3 times in the first period. So that was pretty interesting. Prashnio was my other big punt on the card. I just realized I said period, dude. Too much coaching wrestling. First round. Prashnio was my other big punt on the card, and he got the dub. I mean, I don't know why he was getting a ton of hate. I mean, I felt like a lot of our Discord members hated him too, and I get he's not great, but Khalil shows some holes too. I'm surprised that didn't end in a knockout. I liked Khalil and Prashnio. It just didn't end in a knockout. They were swinging in a knockout. It just didn't happen. But whatever, it happens. But he was a live punt for sure. So I didn't hate that he won at whatever is cheap. What was Prashnio's price? Did you say there?
Prashnio was $6,900.
So you got to win at that price. I mean, you can't be too mad. I said Pena and McMahon was super live. And as a salary saver, I liked it. I actually ended up with a good amount of Pena just because she was a $200 cheaper than McMahon. As we talk about, Matt, sometimes that's the case, why they carry more ownership at a near even line. And, it actually paid off big. She got that, I think it was a 3rd round sub. I said to fade Tavares. He's a super boring fighter, won't finish. And that came to fruition. I did have some ACJ, and he lost that fight. And he actually just got cut, Matt. that was the line for
really?
Like, that's your last one. So he just got cut, and he didn't win, obviously, but I liked Armin a lot versus Fervola, and that was one of our biggest, I think, shifts in the Discord and the pivots for us, where that helped a lot due to the opponent change. I don't know if you recall, but Armin's opponent pulled out, Fervola's opponent pulled out. They're the same weight, and they're like, "You guys want to fight?" And they're like, "Hell yeah!" So that changed pricing a lot, and Armin did really well. What did Armin score? Does it have it there?
Armin scored 125.72, and he made the optimal.
That was the biggest pivot for us. That was one
Yeah.
I said was absolutely core after that was a big Discord pivot. So love that. I did say Marina Rodriguez was a very good fighter, and I liked her as a heavy underdog against Amanda Hebus. I didn't have enough of her though. I mean, she did end up in probably 20-25% of my lineups. It maybe it helped for some of them, but it didn't like line up. You know what I mean? It wasn't
Right.
enough, but. I know Joey called that one in the Discord, so got to give him credit for that. But yeah, she knocked out Hebus pretty good. Muradov versus Sanchez made my love list. I said you needed to target that fight. Muradov got the finish, so I was hype about that. Unfortunately, I think, Matt, my best Dustin line, like I said, I only had a couple, but my best Dustin line had Sanchez. So I was like, that was, and I think if Sanchez won, everything else was like near perfect. Would have been a takedown. So I was like, of course. But yeah, but Muradov won, which helped a lot of my other lines. But I said I like Calderwood, and none of I just didn't think I would score too
I remember
well.
that.
Calderwood, she did pretty good, right?
Yeah, she was actually made the optimal 107.97.
So I think to be honest, I think there's so much more leverage with the new scoring system for a lot of these girls fights too. I mean, I think we've been actually lighting them up, these these non-finished fights. So I think there's a lot of that. But and then I told everyone not to sleep on Michael Chandler. I tried to tell you guys in the video. I mean, he's, in my opinion, the best Bellator fighter ever, and he came out and looked absolutely phenomenal.
He did.
Phenomenal against a very tough Dan Hooker. Yeah, I don't know. You saw the knockout,
Matt?
Yep,
I saw everything. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he hits like a truck. So unfortunately, casual Kev took too much Connor, but
yeah,
I get toasted for it, but I deserve it. But everything else went pretty well. But let's get into this fight night slate. It's a huge one with a lot of fight changes as well, Matt. I think it still sits at 13 or 14 now. I'll also say there's a ton of studs and duds on the slate, Matt, which is, I don't know if I've never really, I guess, considered it, but this might be the most we've ever seen over, like, there's 7 or 8 fighters over 9K in this card. So that's pretty interesting.
There is. Well,
point. So that's pretty interesting. I think that means there's obviously going to be some punts and there's going to be some studs and duds for sure. So it's choosing this is going to be, you're going to have to be on your P's and Q's, but I see huge leverage. I think this is going to be a very, very volatile slate. I'll tell you right now. I think if you're a cash games player, I don't know if this is the one for you, but if you want a chance to not tie at the top and win a milli, this is the one. I think this is it. There's just so many pay up options to just completely, assume that any one of these guys is going to be the guy is a fool's bet. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think good leverage. So I'm excited that we can, get some big wins this weekend if everything goes right.
Sounds great. This plus the Super Bowl. What more can you ask for, Kevin?
Yeah, it's
a great weekend. Yeah, we're gonna be on the couch drinking beers all weekend long. That's for sure.
I can't wait. So let's get into this card. We got Osborne versus Rivera to kick it off. One of those, I mean, what a way to kick it off, man. I was telling you a little bit about this before we started. These guys are both good grapplers, yada, yada. We can talk about that stuff, but let's get down to brass tacks here. This fight is absolutely wild. This is going to determine the fate, Matt, of, I think, like the entire card for so many people off the rip. Like on a 14 fight slate, like you're going to know by.
We love to hear that.
Yeah, 6 o'clock. So you probably want to have a good amount of exposure for this either way. This is a minus 135 finish chance fight, which is nice. It's nothing, out of this world, but it's nice. At this pricing, it's unbelievable. So because of an opponent change, Rivera was supposed to, Rivera replaced Bonder, who was supposed to fight Osborne. We have a $7,800 favorite at a minus 225 favorite versus a 7,500 under.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to pick a little chalky and start your lineup with an awesome salary saver, obviously take Osborne at 7,800 and that line's actually going in his favor. When we talked earlier, it was minus 185. So he's actually becoming more of a favorite.
Yeah.
But if you want to get super contrarian and separate yourself from the field right away, take Rivera. And I think this fight, Matt, in my opinion, this is my outlook on this. You have to target it 100% because someone has to win this. Okay. Obviously there has to be, well, I shouldn't say someone has to win. There could be a draw. 99% of times there's a winner. Fights. Okay. Obviously, if it was a draw, then both would be, but I don't see that.
Right. Yeah.
Someone has to win this fight at sub 8K. To be a winner at sub 8K, you really need everything else to kind of, go in a certain way to not make the optimal. Like this has such a great shot to make the optimal. Like if you're a winner at that price, you have to do nothing to, to fall short of the optimal, like literally nothing. And this, like I said, has a better finish chance than not. They're 2 high octane guys. So I really do put this at, for my personal opinion, like 90% chance to make the optimal as a fight. So this is how you want to start a card.
Well, and do you know what's really scary about this, Kevin, is that the odds really aren't in Osborne's favor that much. Like, they're still giving Rivera a 32% chance to win, which is
Yeah.
that's terrifying. Like, imagine if he pulls off that upset, which he definitely could. $7,800 and $7,500. Yes, I completely agree with everything you just said. So cheap for both these guys, and you'll love to hear the ownership. Before I give you the ownership, let's read off the benchmark. So anything under 29% ownership will be definitely more GPP options here for the slate. So that being said, Osborne's at 23.2%. Rivera at 6.8%. Kevin,
I think that Osborne one's going to jump.
It has to. It has to.
I think that Rivera one's probably going to sit. I think it's going to stay, and that's where Rivera so easily. I mean, that is such a good punt option.
Yeah.
Such a good punt option. I mean, that is ridiculous. At that percentage, his win chance. I mean, when you're looking at 6% ownership, you think a guy is $6,700 with a 6% chance to win. You know what I mean? That's crazy. So I love that.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said.
Beautiful. Great first fight. Moving on, we got Choi Song-woo versus Yusuf Zalal. It's a little odd for me to see Yusuf so low on a card, to be honest. I mean, I think he's a good fighter, Matt. You know, you take a loss in the UFC after 3-0, I guess you get kicked to the bottom of the barrel.
That's funny. Yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, disrespect on him, but I think he's a good fighter. I have a pretty high opinion of him. I think he is live, especially for cash games. He'll make a up list for cash. I'm hoping. It depends on your ownership, but I will say he does need a finish to hit value. He's not a super high production fighter, high volume fighter. So, you know, in his 3 UFC wins, we've seen that. I mean, he did get a good knockdown against, I think it was Peter Barrett, that like almost ended a finish. But besides that, you know, he's fallen short of that price point a couple times. So, I mean, I'd like him in cash to win, and I won't take too much Choi. I mean, Choi does have hands, but I do think Zalal is a better fighter all around. But again, he needs Zalal to be over that like 29% benchmark, like you said.
Yeah, so after hearing this, you might not like him as much. So it seems like the public agrees with you on the fact that he's going to need to finish in order to win. Now, the finish chance isn't that high, right? Is that correct?
Correct. It's close to an even line, but it's more expected to go the distance than not.
Okay. So right now, Zalal is 20.6% owned, and Choi is at 12.8% owned. So because of that, do you like him more for GPP, or are you going to stick with your guns here and say, yeah, he's cash viable?
Take him off cash. That's a big jump.
All right.
9% the benchmark. I'm going to take him off. Well, we'll put him green. I still think he's green, Matt. I think he should. But yeah, he's off the level.
How about Choi? Is he going to be green?
I don't know. I mean, it's contrarian. What was he at for ownership?
He's at 12.8. So that's pretty low. That's very low, actually.
What do they got him in a win chance?
For win chance, they have him at a 29% chance.
You know what? I'm not going to say there's no chance with him. I mean, if you want to put him yellow, I'm not keen on him. Like I said, I'm not going to have a ton on him. That being said, I don't want to red light him, especially like this is going to be a studs and duds lineup. And if you get the right duds, I mean, it's not just getting. That's the thing when there's so many. It's not just getting the right duds. Usually, it's like if I can get the underdog right, it's smooth sailing. This is going to be like it's so hard because even if you get that right, okay, now you got to get one of these 9Ks right after. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's going to be interesting. But yeah. So none of these studs and dud guys are going to be too red for me, just because I think one of those is going to shake up the slate pretty bad.
For sure. Yeah, I can agree with you.
Moving on, we got Molly McCann versus Lara Procopio. This is very interesting. So this is the worst finish chance on the card by far, Matt, at plus 240. You know, but I think we burn you if you fade it. I really do. We talk about this new scoring, Matt. I have a different outlook towards, you know, this changes up everything. You know, when you're adding points for any strike at all, it shakes up everything. And I think, you know, these high volume female fighters have a big spot. Like I just talked about Joanne Calderwood and stuff like that. Like, and Ann is one of those fighters. You know, I see potential with her. She actually scores super well in decisions, and at her 8,500 price tag, she could find herself in the optimal with a decision like a Calderwood. Calderwood did at 400, and she cleared 1.7 or something. And yeah, she's in a very similar spot. And then you got to consider the fact, like, this is what you kind of know you're getting out of her, a really good like decision pace. What if she finishes somehow? You know what I mean? Then she absolutely. It's not like when we say they have a low finish chance, it's still like what 15 to 20% or something, like on a really low finish chance. Like that's not that bad. She could still easily do it. So McCann has to be live for me, especially at 3-2 in the UFC against an 0-1 opponent. I'm not looking too much into Lara. I mean, again, I hope that doesn't burn me. Just don't know too much about her. I've looked into her, but I'm not looking too much to pick her.
Well, McCann is the benchmark, Kevin. She's sitting there at 29%, and Procopio's at 27.1%. So also right there below her. So let me ask you a weird question here. Is this stackable? Did I just break your brain?
I would say, no. I'm going to
Not
stick to my
yet.
gun.
Okay.
There is not a 3-round fight that's stackable. But Matt, that's a very good point. We need to start looking at fights like that with this new scoring system. And if you were going to talk about one that has that kind of like upside for that, it would
Right.
be something
It'd be
like
this. Yeah.
It would be something like this. The thing is, though, Matt, it's almost like a double-edged sword with the new scoring, and there obviously there's going to be higher scoring losers. But that means in the optimal, in theory, the highest scoring winners should also be higher.
Right.
The winners should be higher scoring as well. So like, yeah, this loser might get 70 where she would have got 50 with the old scoring, but now the winners should be getting 140 when they should have got 120. You know what I
Right.
mean?
They just have such a higher ceiling in general. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think everything should come out in the wash for still not stacking 3-rounders.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like it. I'm not saying it couldn't work, but I definitely wouldn't stack it on a card this big because there's no way that's going to be close to the optimal.
So is McCann more of a cash option, or are you going to greenlight both these girls?
I think you can greenlight both just because it makes sense where it's that pricing where like I'm more on McCann because I've seen what she can do more and I like her to win. That being said, though, you got to think like, so you have, say you target 100% of this fight, McCann should be score pretty well historically speaking if she wins. Now say you have 50% of Lara. Well, Lara just won at 7,700, so you're going to be looking pretty good in that aspect too. You know what I mean? So that this is a situation I like where both, either win makes a lot of sense for you.
Right. All right. Got it. Let's move on.
Moving on, another female fight, Matt, that I love. Carol Rosa versus Jocelyn Edwards. These girls aren't too bad at finishing, all things considered. Like they're better than the previous two we talked about, especially Edwards. I actually like this fight for both sides, Matt, as well. Very similar situations. We just talked about the volume of McCann, and I will tell you right now, Rosa. As much as I just talked about McCann, Rosa throws even more heat. She has landed. This is crazy. Like even by old scoring standards, she's awesome. So like with the new scoring, I love it. She's had 2 UFC fights and she's landed over 300, almost 300 significant strikes and over 350 total strikes in her 2 fights. That's insane. So if she wins a decision, she can easily make the optimal. And again, she's a pretty good finisher, so she always has a shot at a knockout. I think Edwards has a really solid finish chance too. Like she has big power, even more power than probably Rosa. So if she wins, obviously that's going to skyrocket her to the top of the slate at 7,500, and she could get a knockout. And I think that's how she finishes, or she would win this fight, would be a finish. So either Rosa, puts that crazy volume on and with a chance at a finish, or Edwards catches her and sleeps her. So double green light for sure.
Got it. Well, you'll love to hear the ownership too, because Rosa, 37.9%. Kevin is the second highest on the slate. Jocelyn Edwards at the 13.4%. So do you see any leverage there? That's very low.
Yeah, I think there's leverage for Edwards. I did say I like Edwards. I'm a little shocked at the ownership for Rosa. That's a little depressing.
Yeah, second highest on the slate. Yep, 37.9%.
Starts on her, but I mean, also like I said, that's the problem. In a decision, she has a really good chance to make the optimal. Like I said, that is insane, Matt. Like 300 sig strikes in 2 fights.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah,
that's the issue. So it's gonna be hard to full fade her. But if you want to take some fades there and just hope she doesn't get a knockout, that's a 14 fight slate, Matt.
Right.
I mean, a gun to my head, if I think she's gonna make the optimal, I'd say it's like 50-50 still. You know what I mean? This isn't like Osborne Rivera where I feel really good about her making the optimal, or that this fight making the optimal. Rosa making the optimal, probably still less than 50% in my mind. So it's close. I mean, I think she's a good pick, but if you want to fade her a couple times, it's not a bad idea.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's that's where a lot of the chalk's going. So for sure.
All right, moving on then.
Moving on, Devonta Smith versus Justin James. I think this fight you target 100% of, Matt. I
Got
really
it.
do.
That explains the ownership. Good.
I mean, I'm assuming Devonta Smith is carrying the most.
Third most now.
Okay. I just assumed he would just because of the knockout potential. I mean, this is tough when choosing between, studs and duds pairing, but I think, this is a stud and dud pairing that makes sense because I don't think you have to think too hard about this one. I think the winner of this fight should have a really good shot to make the optimal. I mean, I think it's going to end in a finish. Both guys crack super hard. Smith, I like more as the favorite, and I think he deserves it with his record. He has crazy finish ability, and he's consistent. James isn't as much of those things, but he does crack, and we saw him hit like a truck on his. We know he hits like a truck, and we saw him in his debut. I think it was against Frank Camacho as a heavy underdog. Came in and absolutely put the lights out. So and he's got good wrestling background. So I think he's a viable punt option for sure at 7K. I think this fight doesn't go the distance. I'd be surprised if it does. And this is one of the front runners to make optimal for sure.
Awesome, pretty straightforward. Then 37.5% ownership on Smith, and then on James 9.9. So people are. It looks like the people that are in these very high decision chance fights are still the underdogs are still carrying very low ownership. So like you said when we started out this video, definitely going to be a volatile, I feel like, slate in general. So
Yeah,
with
I
the
would
ownership makes it very appealing.
yeah, I wouldn't be as high on James if I didn't see him put the lights out like he did, and he's a tough guy. I mean, I still think, Devonta Smith's a tall mountain to climb for him, but that being said, I mean, he's still alive. He's still alive.
Right. All right then.
So,
So I'm going to green light both of them.
yep.
All right, moving on then.
Moving on to Timur Valiev versus Martin Day. I hate this fight, Matt. I don't know.
Red light.
No, I don't. It's not a red light. I just don't like it. It's one of
Okay.
the ones like I remember if it was like 2 slates ago. It was the first fight in the card, and I was like, "Ugh, you have to take some of this fight, and it's gonna burn you if you don't." And I hate it. This is one of those. It's it does have a better chance to finish than not. Valiev, as we just talked about, Matt, that line is cruising. When it first opened up, I think he was like a minus 300 ish. It locked in on Bovada at minus 350 yesterday, and now this morning, what, minus 450, right? So
Yep.
it's crazy. Constantly shifting in his favor, which is fine. I mean, what's his ownership looking like?
20.8, so relatively low.
That's pretty low, man, for a minus 450 favorite, even at that price tag. That is crazy. I mean, that's got to be the second,
Yep.
second most favorite fighter on the to win. Yeah, he's the second highest favorite to win. So that's interesting to me. So there's some leverage there that makes me like him a little more. He's live. He is live, but he isn't a great finisher. He's technically 0-0 in the UFC, 0-1. He should be 0-1 because he got, I think, starched by Trevin Jones, but Trevin Jones got popped for weed after or something, which is so stupid, but because he really got knocked out. But I really don't like this one. I do see upside for Timur. I guess Martin Day, like I said, is 0-3 in the UFC with 2 coming by finish.
Okay, so how is he still here?
Yeah, dude, welcome to UFC where it's COVID times, man. COVID time. But I would probably avoid Day, though. I mean, what was the other guy? Quan Townsend, who was like 0-67 or something. He just kept getting fight. I was like, okay.
Wait, really?
No, it wasn't that bad. It was like
okay.
it's like 0-4 or something, but it was like COVID times. People kept pulling out. They're like, "You want to try again?" He's like, "I guess."
Yeah, I guess so.
Probably like sad about it. But yeah, I'd probably avoid Day for the most part. He hasn't really done much, even outside the UFC. I mean, if he ends up being the one that breaks the slate, whatever. Like I said, I think Timur should win, but I don't know. I just don't like this fight. I don't like the fact Timur's technically on.
It just sounds like you don't like the upside on either one of these guys. But you like the finish chance on Timur.
It's not so much the upside as much as I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
I don't think either of these guys are that good. So it's like, even though Day really sucks, Timur's 0-1 in the UFC, hasn't done a ton of work outside. I mean, he was, I think, in the World Series of Fighting for a bit. It's won a couple, lost a couple. That's like, I don't know. It's just one of those ones. I think you have to yellow light this fight as a whole, Matt, and I hate it. That's it.
All right, yellow light it is.
One of those ones that doesn't I don't have too little exposure to or too much exposure.
So if you're completely wrong, we won't yell at you then because it's yellow light.
That's my.
That's your stance.
Again, I want that one off the slate.
Yeah.
So.
Got it.
Moving on, we got Mike Rodriguez versus Danilo Marquez. Love this fight. So much positive volatility, if that makes sense, Matt. I think Danilo is a good punt as the underdog. I think he matches up well against Mike Rodriguez. That being said, Mike Rodriguez is a guy he's trained with. I used to wrestle with this guy all the time, and I'll tell you, his grappling is very good, but coming out of a grappling proficient camp like Joe Lozon's, you think it would be a little better almost, and that's where Danilo makes some money. So I do worry about it going to the ground, especially with Mike. I mean, Mike got submitted in his last fight, by Kimura. I don't know if you remember that, Matt. It's against Ed Herman, super controversial. So hit Ed Herman with a beautiful, and I took Mike Rodriguez a ton of, obviously, last slate because, I mean, I think he's good for, not just unbiasedly, I know the guy, but it's unbiasedly, he's really good for tournaments. You know what I mean? He's kind of a glass cannon.
Okay.
And he kneed Ed Herman right in the ribs, dropped him, and the ref, it wasn't Ed Herman's fault. The ref thought it was a groin shot, so he stopped
I remember that.
Yeah, and Ed Herman ended up, to his credit, coming back and winning. And if you think I'm being biased, Dana White actually paid Mike Rodriguez a win bonus in a loss. So that's how the UFC felt. He said it was like the worst thing. Dana White was like, it's the worst thing I've ever seen, freaking out about it.
Right.
Bad refereeing, but but I do think Rodriguez hits like a truck. We saw with that knee, we saw in his, I think, a step and elbow, the fight before that, knocked the dude out clean. So I think he's a great, just a great target all the time. Like I said, he gets finished when he loses usually, and when he wins, he usually finishes. So I think this is in that same category of James versus Smith for me. And if you want to make a pivot off of Smith around that price, I think Rodriguez is not a bad one.
All right. Well, Rodriguez is 32.4% owned, so that's going to be more cash viable. Definitely, like you said, should be targeted in GPPs as well, right?
5% less than Smith, as we just talked about too. So that,
Yep.
like that's a little pivot, maybe the little difference you need.
Got it. And Danilo at 18%. So half the percent ownership is as Michael Rodriguez. So what's your stance on that now?
Well, he's about twice as much ownership as James too as the punt, and that makes sense to me. I do think Danilo, as much as I hate to say it, probably has a better chance to win than James. I mean, it's close, but these are two great pay up and punt options to target. So both punts will obviously make my love list, and then both favorites too.
Right.
Love
Got it. All right.
Moving on, we have Michael Johnson versus Clay Guida. Wow, weird fight, straight up. These guys have been fighting the UFC for a combined 25 years, Matt. 25 years. Tons of respect to both of them. These are both veterans. I love them both, but they are washed up for sure. Again, with the utmost respect, I love these guys. Grew up watching them, but they're trash bags now. Like they're absolute trash cans.
So McGregor. Okay.
Yeah, you're gonna get a lot of love for that one. But yes, McGregor. Just like that. Johnson has lost 7 of his last 10, and Guida has lost 6 of his last 10. They're really not that great anymore. I don't have a ton of interest in this fight, Matt. It should be a slower pace, slower octane. Johnson is a pretty bad grappler, though, and that does scare me against Guida a little bit. Guida's really tough to knock out, so I'd like that's how Michael Johnson makes his money. At 8,800, I mean, I'm going to avoid Johnson for the most part. I have this looming fear that Clay Guida somehow does something stupid and just catches him in a choke or something. I hope he doesn't fall into a submission, because if he does at 7,400, he's obviously making the optimal. So maybe yellow light for Guida. I'll still stick to my guns and say I'll avoid Michael Johnson, though.
Got it. I think it's the first red light we've had so far. So Michael Johnson, we will be giving a red, but the ownership agrees with you, Kevin.
Really?
17.7% ownership on Michael Johnson, and then Guida at 11.5. So very low on both of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to take a stance somewhere. This 14-fight slate, like I said, there's a lot of good options on this one, especially with the new scoring. People who would have previously been like avoidable, like realistically, like Molly McCann. I mean, I would say Carol Rosa can make the optimal because of her high octane without the new scoring system. But Molly McCann is someone who's like was right on that line, but with the new scoring system, now she's like viable, where I probably would have had her more in cash games. You know what I mean?
Right.
So more people are viable, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's move on to Carlos Diego Ferreira versus Beneil Dariush. I'm low-key super hyped for this fight. You're going to want some sides of this for sure, especially at that pricing. The only reason that isn't making my love list, Matt, is these guys have already fought. The first time they did, it was pretty low octane, pretty low scoring fight. I still see huge finish potential, though. I don't think this is one of those ones, even at their pricing, I would be surprised if this makes optimal without a finish. I will say that. I think they need a finish. The only thing I am noticing, that really sticks out to me is that Dariush is cheaper and is the slight underdog, and he is on a 4-fight finish streak and was the winner when the first time these two met. So that's going to push me a little bit more in his direction. Like, again, cheaper, on a finish streak, and won the first matchup. You know what I mean? History tends to repeat itself in the sport more times than not. We've seen that countless times. That being said, you don't want to sleep on Ferrer. He's an absolute savage. Just submitted Anthony Pettis, and he's an absolute killer too. So I think you want sides of this. Both are green.
Yeah, well, nobody knows what to do with this fight, Kevin. Both ownerships are actually pretty low based on what you just said, but you said that this should finish, correct?
It's expected to end in a finish. I wouldn't be like, I'll be honest, it's not like, oh, this should finish. It's like, it's expected to,
right?
But yeah, I like barely. It's like minus 115, I think.
Dariush at 23.1% ownership, and Diego Ferreira, I think that's whatever, 22.6% ownership. So it's split dead right in the center, Kevin, for both ownerships.
That's a make or break.
Yep, 100%. Am I green lighting this, by the way?
Yeah. Green light. It takes some sides for sure. Yeah. I think throw it in, throw some darts.
Got it.
Moving on, Cody Stamann versus Askar. At first when I saw this fight, I thought it was like Askar Askarov, and I thought they got it spelled wrong, and I was like, oh nope, it's just Askar.
I just noticed that. What? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Kevin, let's hear
it. So Cody Stamann versus Askar. A late fight change here, as Stamann got an opponent change. He's now the heaviest favorite on the card. I like Stamann. I think he's a pretty good winner for the most part. Askar has been really tough outside the UFC, but is making his debut, and he really hasn't fought anyone outside the organization worth mentioning. I like Cody for cash. I think he should be a lock. What's his ownership, real quick?
Cody is at 28.3% ownership, so 7th highest on the slate, which is right on that cusp.
That is crazy to me. Like, I cannot believe that.
Might just be
He's a
because of lineup construction, honestly.
Yeah, but he's the heaviest favorite, and he's a good winner.
Yeah.
Minus 550. I still put him in cash. He's right on that line. I think he should win
Okay.
and should carry higher ownership around the time of lock because there was a shift in opponent here, so it might need to catch up a little bit. But I will avoid Cody for the most part in GPP. All 5 of his wins have come by way of decision. And he's a pretty low octane guy. He doesn't have enough wrestling to really. He wrestles a little bit, but not enough to really save his scoring either. So I'll avoid.
Well, you heard Stammen's ownership 28.3%, and then apparently Askar's trash. Carrying no ownership right now, it's 0% ownership, so that's obviously not true. He should carry some ownership, but it should be much more than 0. Kevin, I think we can both agree with that.
That's what I mean. I think we'll see a shift too, and that's where I think Cody will, easily clear that 29% threshold that we talked about.
Right. All right, let's move on then. I think we got 4 more fights. Yep.
3 technically because Renau and Chaseon's off.
Oh, okay.
But we got Alexander Pantoja versus Manel Cape. Usually, I'm not super keen on targeting 25-pounders, but the new scoring system changes things up a bit, making it interesting for sure. But these guys also crack. I love both these guys. They're very high octane guys, good finishers at the weight. I love the pricing here as well, and I just see huge upside for both of them. Manel is making his UFC debut, but don't sleep. This dude is a murderer. He has 14 finishes of his 15 wins, Mac. It's ridiculous. He hits like a truck, hits like an absolute truck. Alexander is a pretty damn good finisher as well at this weight class with 16 finishes of 22 wins. I know you're probably not super familiar with this, Matt, but as a 125er and a flyweight, that's a pretty damn good finish rate for both of these guys. That's heavyweight numbers. You know what I mean? Okay. So I like that heading into this. This also has, like I said, high octane potential because these guys got tanks. And I do think Pantoja has had a lot more high level experience. And I actually think he should probably be, we're looking at a -120 favorite and a -110 for it's basically a near even line.
Right.
But I think Pantoja isn't quite getting the respect he deserves. I think he should be like at almost a -150 or something, to be honest. He's had a lot more experience, a lot more high level experience, and he's a good winner. But that being said, I think you'll want both sides. You both have huge potential. I see a good chance to finish here and a good chance to make optimal at that pricing, especially.
Okay, Pantoja at 26.4% ownership and Cape at 18.9. So Kevin, both these guys are very, very low owned. So do you like the leverage there?
I'd probably split the middle. Right when you're making lineups, see, start figuring out. I'm not saying 100% exposure to this fight, but you do want probably a lot of exposure to this fight, and then just figure out where you want to, jump off at. Just start with Manel in one, start with Alexander in one, and just I don't really see leverage on either one. Like I said, I do think Pantoja is a little bit more of he should be a heavier favorite than he's probably listed as. But that being said, he's still $400 more, so I like Manel where he is too.
Do I greenlight both these guys?
Yes, sir.
Alrighty, move on to the final two.
Corey Sandhagen versus Frankie Edgar. This is interesting. On a slate this big, you really need everything to go right to make the optimal at 9,400, Matt. Honestly, like I have my doubts of that happening for Sandhagen.
I hear that a lot from you. You hate the high price tags.
A high price tag, man. I mean, and everything has to go right. If you're not a 5-round fight, if you're unless you're a super sure, this is a huge card. Again, huge. So you're not just fighting the other people at 9,400. You're fighting all the, like we talked about, the Carol Roses and the Molly McCanns of the world, and even the first fight, Osborne, Rivera. Like you're fighting off them too. Like just the numbers don't care. That's like, what is it? Facts don't care about your feelings.
Right.
It's like numbers don't care about your price tag. They don't care if you're 9,400. You're not going to get that bump to optimal if you didn't score high enough. So I think I like him. I think he should win. He's probably a good cash games option. What's his ownership looking like?
31, so 5th highest.
Okay. It's just, I do like that. It's just, and for cash, I have him in my cash category. He was one of my core cash plays. I don't know, man. I'll take a hard stance. Fade him in GPP. He's not going to make the optimal.
Oh, bang. You heard it here. Am I really redlining him right now?
You're going to redline him for GPP.
Oh, man. He took a stance. That's a good stance.
Hard stance against this one of the heaviest favorites on the card. That being said, I will say I took Frankie as a heavy underdog last time against Pedro Munoz. Paid off big in a big decision win. I'm not saying Frankie's going to win this one. I'll put him in my punt category again. It's Frankie Edgar. But you got to understand, like, he's a tough and talented fighter. He's a multiple-time world champion, has great cardio, ridiculously tough to finish. And people forget, too, Frankie Edgar is cutting weight. Frankie Edgar doesn't cut weight. He was always like 1'6" at 155 pounds. He's finally cutting weight. Like he always said he was against it in his career. So his last fight was bantam, and he looked awesome. I mean, Pedro Munoz is a truck. That dude is tough. I think Pedro Munoz knocked out Cody Garbrandt. I mean, Pedro Munoz is a problem, and Frankie Edgar first fight at bantam beat him. I'm not saying Frankie Edgar doesn't have a shot in this fight, Matt. It's Frankie friggin' Edgar. Like don't
Right.
just like put some respect on this man's name. What's the win percentage we're looking at here?
So win percentage is actually 20% for Edgar on the dot. Ownership's at 15.6, which is actually higher than I thought, with this being the heaviest favorite on the card.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take Sandhagen at I'll take him in cash. Like I said, I still like him there, and I'll take Frankie as a punt.
There you go, and that's not a bad strategy, as we've talked about many times, Kevin. Have 100% exposure in cash, and then 0 exposure in GPPs, and see where you land. If you cash in cash, you still make your money back, and if you don't, well, then guess what? GPPs are going to take off. So
that technique has been very profitable and viable for us, Matt.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
For sure.
I wish you would have done it with McGregor, but hey.
Yeah, here I am.
Here you are, being the casual.
But moving on to the main event, we got Alexander Volkov versus Alistair Overeem. Even on a slate this large, Matt, I mean, as much as I'd like, our most successful night we ever had was on a main event fade of a fight card just about this size.
This ain't the one.
This ain't the one. I think. Yeah, this ain't the one exactly. I gotta assume this is an easy lock for optimal. I mean, this is, much as that sounds crazy on a 14, I would put it as a lock. This is the only 5-rounder, and it's also between 2 of the hardest hitting heavyweights in the organization at awesome pricing. This is a fight that's been in the works for a couple of years now, Matt. I want to see it. It's so funny. There's only like so many elite heavyweights, and I feel like these guys are just like round robining all the time. I'm like, it's almost like hard to keep track. It's like, has Volkov fought Overeem? Has Overeem fought Lewis? Has Lewis fought Ngannou? You know what I mean? It's just constant, just back and forth. And this is one of those ones, like, it's just like, it's happening now. And both guys hit like friggin' Mack trucks. It's a minus 245 finish chance. I think that's like not even fair. I think it should be higher than that. I mean, just because Overeem alone, he's either going to knock you out or get knocked out. But I do love this in most circumstances. The only world I could somehow see where this doesn't end in a finish is if Volkov just picks him apart from the outside and goes to a decision, somehow doesn't score well. But I don't see that happening. At 8,600, he's probably going to put it on. And Volkov also hits like a truck. There's a lot of variables here. I think Volkov's a little more technical on his feet. Overeem is still very technical, very good kickboxer, but Overeem also has some good grappling. So if it does go to the ground, he could bring it there. Overeem has the most suspect chin in the game, though. He's been knocked out hundreds of times. Actually, I want to see something real quick, Matt.
Some live updates from Kevin.
Live updates. I remember I was looking at this the other day. So Overeem's 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Are you kidding?
His last 13 losses in a row are by way of finish.
Yeah. That minus 250 finish chance is actually really low then.
Yeah, and especially when then you look at his wins, and it's like knockout. Literally, this is knockout, decision, knockout.
Well, what is Volkov doing to the line? Like, is he a stand-up guy? Like, what's going on? Why is his?
I'll tell you his. Just another quick live one. I'll tell you his knockouts. This is his last wins. Knockout, decision, knockout, decision, knockout. Yeah, he has crazy good hands. I mean, more decisions than Overeem. He still has 21 knockouts of his 32 wins. So dude cracks. And it's over glass jaw. So definitely love his fight. I think you need 100% exposure to this one, Matt.
All right. Well, big surprise here. Volkov, 40.5% ownership is the highest on the card. Overeem's actually relatively low. Kevin, 24.2% ownership. It's going to be another Poirier type situation, Kevin. Whereas if this guy actually does win, he's going to break the slate and nobody's going to have him just because. When I say nobody, I mean a very low ownership.
I don't know if you remember the fight against Augusta Sakai. Augusta Sakai was like 15-1, like 5-0 in the UFC, and everyone was like took him against Overeem, and Overeem was like, "No, I'm still really good."
Right. The last fight he did was against it was Walt Harris. That was the one that I watched. He was an underdog in that one too.
Yeah, he got the crap beat out of him and then slapped him.
Yeah, yeah.
As much as he has a glass jaw, he's still tough. It's just when he gets the lights put up. But like Volkov has some bad losses too. People forget that. Like It's like that Derek Lewis one where he was winning the fight and then got slept with like 10 seconds left. Like, this is not like, nothing about this fight is a lock either way. You know what I mean?
Right.
He lost Blades pretty bad recently, so granted it's a wrestler, different style, but still, I think both sides are super live.
And that being said, they're giving him a 34% or 38% chance to win over him, so that's pretty close up there. You know, I definitely have no idea what's going to happen here in this fight as well. So definitely gonna be a fun one to watch, though, right?
100%. That's gonna be. This is gonna be like. I think this is gonna be one of the most fun fights we've seen in a long time.
All right, Kevin. Let's bring it all together here. Let's hear your cash core, your GPP plays, and punts.
Absolutely. So core cash plays. I like Sandhagen. I think he should win as the #2 fighter in the world at bantam he's #2 for a reason. We just saw him come off a big win against Marlon Moraes. I definitely like Sandhagen. Stamen, heaviest favorite on the card, -550, should win. Osborne, most, he's going to be, I don't know. We don't know his ownership because it's still too recent. What did you say Osborne's ownership is right now?
Osborne is at 23.2. That should go up.
What is it? 23.2?
Yeah.
All right. Predict he is going to be 60%.
60. So you think he's going to be the highest on the card?
In actual lock, when it locks, I think he's going to be 60. Yeah.
Okay.
Really
so yeah. So that's probably one of the more obvious cash locks, and I agree with you, Kevin. 100%.
60 is crazy, but I also. In cash games, I think he'll be 60. I don't know about GPPs. But yeah. So
I think he'll be higher in cash games, but yeah.
Really? Okay,
I do.
Cool. We're on that same page. Okay, cool. So yeah, tourney plays. Rodriguez, great pay-up option, is a solid knockout artist, as we talked about. The fight between Alexander and Manel, good finishers, awesome pricing. The fight between Overeem and Volkov, as we just talked about. If that doesn't make optimal, I would be absolutely shocked. Devontae Smith, all 10 wins by way of finish. Great pay-up option. And Justin James, we know, can be finished. Rivera can easily win at that price, and that would blow up the slate we just talked about, Matt, over Osborne. That would just that would crush everything. You're gonna know how you're looking real quick on that one.
Right.
Punts, Marquez, like I said, my boy Rodriguez, he can be finished, and Marquez has a lot of tools to finish fights. Frankie, always a live punt, and love him at his new bantamweight class. There's something about that bantamweight aura for him that just makes sense. And then Justin James has some huge, knockout potential we've seen before in punt power. I mean, we've seen him, came in his UFC debut as a fat underdog, and then he just put the lights out. So I do like him a lot, and I think he's going to have a real fighter's chance.
All right, just breeze right through it. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into yet another MMA breakdown. Look out for our Super Bowl picks. We will be doing a live stream video, and we also have Kevin's prize picks coming out a little bit later today. A bunch of sports going on this weekend. Also, NASCAR starts on Tuesday, so literally going to be working nonstop around the clock. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you guys did enjoy this video, please do hit that subscription button, notification bell, and of course, smash that like button for all of our future MMA content. With all that being said, have a great rest of your day. And let's cash.